Welcome to NAMI Finger Lakes Family Forum. I'm Beth McGee, the Executive Director for NAMI Finger Lakes. We appreciate your joining us for tonight's program. NAMI Finger Lakes is your local affiliate of the National Alliance on Mental Illness. It's a grassroots organization, the largest grassroots organization in the US, dedicated to building better lives for the millions of Americans affected by mental illness. Locally, NAMI provides a helpline, support groups, and education and advocacy opportunities for families and friends of people living with mental health conditions. All of our services are free. This event is being recorded and will be available on the NAMI Finger Lakes YouTube channel soon. So let's get started with tonight's program. Tonight we welcome Melanie Little from the Mental Health Association in Tompkins County. Melanie is a certified peer specialist and a person with lived experience of mental health recovery. She has a passion for supporting people with mental health concerns, combating stigma, using art and nature to promote mental health, and social justice. In addition to her work with Mental Health Association in Tompkins County, Melanie is currently pursuing a master's in social work degree with the University of Buffalo. Welcome, Melanie.
Thank you, Beth. Thanks for having me.
Sure thing. We appreciate your being here. I think you were our first or second guest right after the pandemic hit, when we had to move everything virtually. So I think you were one of our first or second guests for online version of this program. So we really appreciate. Yes. We really appreciated you kind of pinch hitting there and working with us to kind of move through the technical end of this, and really appreciated you being with us then, especially because you were holding so many things together in such a difficult time. So I think you have a presentation for us this evening, and then I do have some questions. And then if there are other guests that do, or other participants that jump into the participants, we'll go ahead and take questions from them too.
Great, sounds good.
All right, so I think you can go ahead and share your screen.
Yes.
Okay. And also, if you would tell us a little bit about yourself.
Yeah, absolutely. Let's see. One thing at a time here. Oh, I'm having a Zoom hiccup. Bear with me while I'm figuring that out. So I am originally from the Rochester area. I came to Ithaca to attend Ithaca College, where I actually studied theater. I never saw myself in the mental health field when I first embarked into adulthood. But I got a job straight out of college at our summer camp that we used to hold here at the Mental Health Association. And I found that I loved it, which I did not expect. So that was a really great experience for me. And one thing led to another. I started working part-time with kids at the agency. I took up a position in the office as an executive assistant, and here I am about 8 years later. So let's see, I am having a challenge here with my Zoom. Beth, I'm wondering, are you able to share the PDF? Thank you so much. It's telling me that Zoom isn't allowed, that I haven't allowed my screen to be shared, but I don't know. It's on my end. Yeah, while we're waiting, I can share a little bit about what my work looks like here at the Mental Health Association. It's evolved a lot over the years. So I juggle a couple of different hats. One of my main areas of focus is our community education programming. So I provide different trainings in the community with groups and organizations, and I'll talk a little more about that in the presentation. I also work with adolescents quite a bit, doing support groups for them and some outreach up at the hospital. As Beth mentioned, I am a peer specialist. So that means like the majority of our staff here, I've gone through some specialized training about using our own lived experiences of recovery to support other people who are going through that experience. We find a lot of times that folks who are maybe either new to the mental health system or have maybe had less than ideal experiences in the system can find that talking to a peer may be an easier experience for them, or just feel more empowering, because we're really interested in supporting people in making their own decisions when it comes to their mental health recovery. How's it going over there, Beth? Is it ready to go? Okay. Go ahead.
Yes, I just got to share my screen now. Sorry, I had to download it.
That's okay.
I don't know why it was telling you couldn't do that.
Yeah, I think it must have updated when I wasn't looking.
Okay. All right. Can we see it?
Yes, beautiful. Thank you.
Okay, great. All righty.
Okay. So on the left here, you'll see this is our logo, the bell. And I'll tell you why that is. So long ago, as folks may or may not be aware, individuals with mental health issues or diagnoses were held in institutions, and even some by shackles and chains in the not so far away past. So our national affiliate, Mental Health America, during the time that the institutions were closing, they put out a call across the country for folks to send in these chains that were used, and they actually melted them all down and cast them into a bell as a symbol of freedom and victory for people who are recovering from mental illness. So that's kind of the story behind the bell there, and I think speaks a lot to our movement and where we're coming from. So next slide. So here's our mission statement here at the Mental Health Association. So we are working in cooperation with the Mental Health Association in New York State and Mental Health America to develop and maintain a coordinated citizens movement. So we're looking for participation from everyday people, recipients of mental health services, and our focus is on empowering people through advocacy and services that promote their mental health, as well as education and information to the general public about mental health issues. We find that a lot of the stigma around mental health, as well as a lot of people's hesitancy to help other people, really comes from this lack of information and lack of knowledge. So that's a really big part of our mission, is to strengthen our community capacity by providing that information. So we have sort of three main program areas, and those are adult peer support, youth and family support, and community education. And so I'm going to get into the details of those. So next slide, please. Great. So our adult peer support programming, you can go ahead. Next slide. So as Beth mentioned, and I talked a little bit about earlier, we are certified peer specialists here at the Mental Health Association. And that includes our finance director, our executive director, kind of top to bottom, we're all peers here. So being a peer specialist, it means that we have our own lived experience, so we can, really empathize and relate with what the people we're working with are going through. We do have specialized training that we go through. We have a certain amount of required supervision hours to maintain our credentialing, and that's through the New York State Office of Mental Health. It's very exciting to us that this work that mental health associations have been doing for decades, supporting peers, is actually finally being recognized by the healthcare system as something that is beneficial. So that's exciting for us. We operate from a person-centered, strengths-based, and trauma-informed perspective. So that means we're really interested in meeting people where they are, building on the strengths that they already have, and working with people with some understanding that we don't know their full story, and we don't know what may be in their past that is affecting them today, and being sensitive to that. So peer specialists can work with folks individually, and all our peer specialists here also are group facilitators. Next slide, please. So this is a little bit about our offerings for adults. So I mentioned we do provide one-on-one support, and that can be over Zoom, over the phone, or in person. Some of the things we work with folks on are building these kind of self-help skills that promote recovery. We're great for emotional support, just listening. Sometimes advocacy. So when people are navigating different services, whether that's mental health or even, services at DSS or even sometimes supports or things like that, we can provide support. We have a drop-in program for adults on Monday every week, 9:30 a.m. to 2:30 p.m. Folks who are familiar with our organization who may remember the Jenkins Center, this drop-in day is sort of in the spirit of that kind of space. So it's a space for peers to come together, socialize, meet new people. There's always arts and crafts and games going on and different things like that. And a way to just drop in and meet with a peer specialist for some support. We're also there to support other peers who want to work on their peer specialist training. So if they're interested in doing this kind of work, we can connect them to that training and help them through that process. On the right here, you'll see a list of our current ongoing groups. So we have groups every day of the week except for Monday when we have our drop-in day. And some of these groups are more kind of open forum check-in groups for folks to just talk about what's on their mind. Some are more activity-based. And I should mention all of our services, the groups one-on-one are free. Our only services that have any cost associated with them are some of our trainings and education programs, which I'll talk about later. But all of this direct support is free. And we are fairly easy access. We're kind of unique in terms of mental health organizations in that we don't have a super lengthy intake process or wait times or things like that. We're really interested in meeting people where they are. And if that means you show up at 1:30 on a Thursday saying, I want to join art group, you can join art group that day. So next slide, please. Okay, so to talk a little bit about our collaborations, we are always really happy to be collaborating with organizations like NAMI, like other places in the community that are serving folks with mental health concerns. So some of those collaborations right now are a monthly visit we do up at Cayuga Medical Center about hope and recovery in mental health. We provide similar workshops at probation in their day reporting program, as well as at the Tompkins County Jail. And we've recently started partnering with the Ithaca Wellness Recovery Court to help facilitate referrals from that program and also bring some peer perspective to share some feedback with their team. We were really pleased that they've reached out to us and are interested in hearing that perspective. So that's an exciting new development for us. Next slide, please. Okay, so the warm line, this is one of our, well, it's, I guess not so new anymore, but this is a newer service of ours that we began right around when the pandemic started, as soon as we were back in the office, which was fairly soon. We came back into the office around the end of May in 2020. So the warm line, you may want to think of as a step down from a hotline. Right? So it's not necessarily where someone is in crisis or an emergency situation, but they really need someone to talk to. So sometimes people call the warm line just because they need to vent and they need someone who's objective to just listen, maybe give a little feedback. Maybe they need some emotional support. Sometimes folks call us when they're experiencing really kind of severe symptoms and they need that grounding of just having another person on the line to witness and be with them in that moment until things subside a little bit. So that can be a really good use for that. Certainly resources, information, we're kind of a hub of information about all different services that could benefit people with mental health concerns. So folks are always welcome to call that line for that kind of information. And we have some folks who call the worm line regularly because they just want someone to check in with on kind of a regular basis and reflect about what may be going on for them. I did notice that I made a typo here, and the warm line is actually available until 3 p.m. So 9 a.m. until 3 p.m. So there's an extra hour in there. But that number is 607-277-7337. Or you can remember it easy way, 277 peer. That's what those numbers line up to. Next slide. Okay, so youth and family support. This is an area where I have my toes dipped in, as well as some of our other staff. And we have some different services that we offer. So next slide. Okay, so part of what is unique about the Mental Health Association in Tompkins County is that we have on staff multiple family peer advocates. So family peer advocate is a unique position. They also have their credentialing through the New York State Office of Mental Health, and that aspect of lived experience is part of their expertise as well. So our family peer advocates or FPAs have that experience of raising children with systems involvement. So that may be the mental health system, developmental disabilities, special education, any one of these number of systems that children with mental health concerns may be involved in. So they receive their own specialized training and ongoing professional development in advocacy, in empowering parents and caregivers, helping them build skills, navigate these complex systems, as well as group facilitation. Next slide. So to tell you a little more about what their role is, because they do frequently work one-on-one with parents or caregivers or with individual family units. So some of the things that they work with parents and caregivers on are developing their own self-care practices. Raising a child who is dealing with these kinds of concerns, disability can be very overwhelming, as I'm sure many of our viewers know. And it can be easy to let go of that self-care piece. But that's what we all need to be our best selves, right? Including being the best parent you want to be. So that's a big thing that they work with folks on. Also helping families to advocate for their children in schools, in treatment systems, even the legal system. Sometimes they work with families who may be involved in family court, navigating the special education, IEP process, that kind of thing, as well as transitions in and out of residential care for children. They can facilitate family wellness recovery action plan workshops, which I'm going to talk a little bit more about in a second, so I'll hold off there. And also a parent support group, which I believe is on Monday evening still. And I sent Beth a list of all of our services, so that will go out as well with more details about that. And they also can be supportive in helping families access additional services if they need them. So in terms of adolescents and young adults, this is more my wheelhouse. So this programming is provided by certified peer specialists like me and some of my colleagues who our lived experience with mental health concerns began in our adolescence. And so we can really relate with that lived experience, even though we may be a bit older now. So there's a few different support groups that we do offer. We have an ongoing group called Art and Mind Youth Group, which is, I call it an art-based support space for teens. So every Thursday from 4:30 to 5:30, we get together in our group room, and I try to make it as low stress a situation as possible for teens. We work with a lot of teens who may be dealing with some measure of anxiety or depression or difficulties with transitions. And we create a space where they are able to use arts and crafts for coping and de-stressing rather than trying to create some beautiful finished piece. And a space to talk as much or as little as they'd like about what's going on for them and feel supported. No art experience necessary, supplies are all provided, and there's no obligation to create any kind of finished piece, but that gives us some structure to the program. We do have a young adults group, which is a peer support and discussion group for what we might call emerging adults. So those of us like myself in the 18 to 30 age range who are entering into adulthood and navigating all of those joys and challenges that can come along with that. We do offer a youth wellness recovery action plan group periodically. We do not have one that is in session right now, but we are gathering referrals and interest to schedule our next program. So stay tuned for that. And we also do outreach at the hospital behavioral services unit for adolescents as well, twice a month. Okay, so let's talk about WRAP, Wellness Recovery Action Plan, this thing I keep talking about. So the WRAP program is something that we're very excited about here at the Mental Health Association. We have a number of WRAP facilitators and we've been offering it for quite some time. And part of what excites me about WRAP and my colleagues, I think as well, is that it's all about personal agency. It's all about kind of sitting in the driver's seat of your recovery journey. So next slide. So WRAP is an evidence-based program. It's in the SAMHSA list of evidence-based practices, and it's created to help people with mental health concerns find hope, learn skills to support their recovery, and make their own decisions when it comes to treatment and self-help. WRAP is unique in that it was created by peers. Mary Ellen Copeland was a woman who lived with bipolar disorder, saw her mother recover from bipolar disorder, who went on to do a PhD about how people with mental illness recover and live, you know, fulfilling lives. And she did focus groups with peers and really workshopped this program with their input and her own lived experience to create this program as it is today. So we do offer WRAP periodically in workshop series. Sometimes we run series for adults, sometimes for adolescents. We're also able to coach people one-on-one through the WRAP process if they want to just make their own plan. And our family peer advocates are also able to work with entire family units or entire households in creating a WRAP plan to support their family as a whole. So a lot of different flexible options for learning these skills. Next slide. This is just kind of a breakdown of the different components of the WRAP program. So we start by looking at these key recovery concepts, which are hope, personal responsibility, self-advocacy, education, and support. Then we get into the wellness toolbox. So oftentimes what people are thinking of in terms of skills for recovery, I think we very much get stuck on this idea of coping skills. I need more coping skills. Yes, coping skills are part of your wellness toolbox, as well as the things that you may do on a day-to-day basis to help keep yourself afloat, the special little things you might do for yourself to cheer yourself up, the things you might do to help yourself recover after a difficult experience. So really helping people feel empowered with all of the things that they have available to them to help themselves. And then we get into these action planning stages to help people build some awareness about what they feel and look like at different stages of their well-being, and what they want to do about it in those circumstances. So really, again, all about that personal agency and self-determination. Next slide. Okay, so community education. Again, education is a big part of what we do at the Mental Health Association to improve our overall community well-being. So next slide. So I'm excited to announce that we are relaunching our mental health first aid program. So folks who may be familiar with us may know that we have in the past offered this 8-hour training that is kind of a comprehensive training about understanding mental health disorders, and how we could assist someone who is either developing a mental health condition or maybe in a mental health crisis. So this is really designed to be kind of just like CPR first aid, right? It's for the layperson. It's for just this kind of person-to-person connection, not necessarily as a professional or anything like that, but really knowing just how to help person to person. And we also have a variation of that training that is youth mental health first aid, which is designed for adults who are helping young people, particularly adolescents. So we do have a number of trainings scheduled already for winter and spring of next year. And you can check out our website or give us a call or shoot us an email for more information about that. We also offer a training called Mental Health and Wellness 101. This is a program out of the Mental Health Association in New York State. And it's a really foundational training to help people build some literacy about, what do we really mean when we say mental health? Because sometimes when I ask people to define it, I get crickets, right? We throw these terms around a lot, but it can be difficult to pinpoint. So talking about, what that means, what mental illness is, what some common signs and symptoms we might recognize are, taking care of ourselves, and really just developing some confidence around that topic. We also provide customized trainings designed for organizations. So if there's an organization that has a specific need or certain skills that their staff are looking for, that may be something we're able to help with. I also spend a great deal of time in the high schools and sometimes even the middle schools, giving classroom presentations to health classes and different student groups. And again, in terms of education, we're also a resource hub. So for information and referral to different community resources, you can always connect with us to learn about those. So that is my spiel overall. I'm happy to take any questions that folks may have. And I also have our contact here for the agency.
Thank you, Melanie. It says there's 18 slides. Is there a slide after this one?
Oh, it must be a blank.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
Didn't want to miss anything.
Yeah.
Okay, there we go. Thank you so much. That's so much information. You have so much going on over there.
Pleasure.
And you have a new space too.
Yes.
Talk a little bit about that.
Yes. Thank you for bringing that up. Yeah. So folks who may be familiar with us already may know that we used to be in the Henry St. John building over on Clinton Street, but we are now in Center Ithaca. So we're very excited about it. It's a newer space. There's more light, which we like, and more centrally located. So we're up on the second floor here. So that's one floor up from the bathrooms and the center hair cutters there. We're in the space that used to be the Human Services Coalition, if folks are familiar with that. Suite 275 here.
Great.
Yeah, really enjoy it.
Nice. It is much lighter.
Yeah.
A little more activity there, I think.
We were in a basement, so
yeah.
Literally moving on up.
Yes, we used to be in a space that was very, very tiny, like the size of 8 by 12. I don't know, it's very tiny, and just fit a table big enough for a very small support group in it. And now we have a really light and airy space. Unfortunately, we haven't been in it for a year. So we're hoping to be able to hold some groups there and classes there sometime soon. We don't know what that's going to look like yet. But so you mentioned the Mental Health and Wellness 101, and that people don't always know really how to describe mental health. So can you do that for us?
Yes, I'd be happy to.
Okay.
So when we think about mental health, we're thinking about not just our emotions, which I think is where people go first. That's definitely a big part of it. It's also our thought processes, our ability to relate to others, our ability to cope with stress, and our ability to make decisions, right? So it really impacts a lot of different areas of our functioning. And when we think about, when something is a challenge to our mental health, it may be affecting our relationships with other people, our ability to do our daily activities, whether that's walking the dog or brushing our teeth, right? As well as our ability to do our work or go to school. So when we're thinking about mental health, it's really a continuum, right? One of my pet peeves, and no offense if anyone says this, no judgment, but one of my pet peeves is when people say, oh yeah, mental health, my sister suffers from mental health. And that doesn't make any sense, right? We wouldn't say, oh yeah, my sister suffers from health. So mental health is something that we all have. We're all on this continuum, and someone may be diagnosed with a mental illness and have good mental health. I consider myself to be in that category, right? I live with an anxiety disorder. I live with a mood disorder, and I have a lot of support and a lot of tools that I've developed over a lot of time and work. So you can be both, right? And on the other hand, someone may not meet criteria for a mental illness, but they might not be in very good mental health right now. Either because they're dealing with something that they're having a hard time coping with, there's a lot of stress, a lot of transition. So mental health is really this whole spectrum of well-being. And it connects to really a lot of different parts of our lives, not just what we're thinking about, you know.
Thank you very much. That's a great description of what we're talking about, I think. And your points about, the two sides of that, being able to, if you do not have a diagnosis, don't have a declared disorder or, a diagnosis, but I think a lot of people right now can relate to not having very good mental health.
Yes.
Just, our entire society at this point is really kind of overwhelmed by things, I think. And so definitely, that makes a lot of sense. Thank you for clarifying.
Yeah.
Um,
And just to add to that, I always like to emphasize that because I think sometimes people think that if they don't meet the criteria of a diagnosis or if they can't name a specific traumatic event, that they don't deserve help. Um, and that's not true, right? Everyone deserves support. Everyone deserves to feel well. And we also know that the earlier that we intervene with mental health problems, the better outcomes people have. So I know I wish I hadn't waited so long to get help for my mental health. I'm glad I got it when I did. And I always just like to throw that in there because that's part of why I waited. Because I thought, other people needed it more than me. But it's important.
yes. Yeah. And I think last year, I think the statistic in the last several years has been that on average, it was 8 years before from onset of symptoms to when a person was seeking getting treatment. And now I think now that statistic is 11 years.
Hmm.
So that's a long time for people to live with difficulty and not, and we also don't necessarily always know or recall trauma that we've experienced.
Yes.
So getting help when we're recognizing that we're not doing quite so well. Um, Even if we don't seem to remember a traumatic event, it could be an entire experience that we're just normalizing. So,
Exactly.
yeah,
Exactly. Trauma is so subjective. And also trauma is not the only thing that causes mental health problems too.
sure, sure.
Um, so yeah, it's good to reach out.
Um, so I wanted to go back and ask you a little more about RAP. When you were with us, I think that was actually the focus of the first time that you were with us last year. I've always been so impressed with the RAP program, and I think I mentioned to Josephine, your executive director, I would like us to do like instead, I would like the library to do a community RAP instead of a community
Mm,
read in the summertime, so we
idea.
can all connect on that,
Yeah,
to do that
yeah,
as a project. That would be really, really a healthy thing for our community to do, I think.
yeah, I love
You,
that.
because you mentioned to me that, to us that the last time you were with us, that it's for anyone. You don't
Yes.
have to consider yourself someone living with a mental health condition to have a plan for wellness and recovery.
Mhm.
So, would you want to talk a little bit about how useful that can be and your thoughts on that?
Yeah, certainly. Yeah, RAP can be applied to so many different situations that you may encounter in life. So when we think back to kind of those action planning phases that I had shown on the screen, the way that's broken down is it's when I'm well, triggers or stressors, early warning signs, when things are breaking down, crisis, and post-crisis, right? So, of course, that's very applicable to mental health conditions, but it's applicable across all different kinds of health concerns or even like personal projects, right? I believe one of our staff recently worked with someone um, developing like how they might think about a small business in that context, right? What would it look like if my business is in crisis? What are some warning signs that I would need to take some action about, right? I know people who have utilized RAP to quit smoking. So in that case, crisis isn't necessarily like I've gone to the hospital, but maybe it's I relapsed and I'm smoking again, or I'm smoking so much that I am having trouble breathing, right? Or something like that. So really, thinking about any kind of change or, I don't love this term, but it's, for lack of a better word, self-improvement, right? Or things that we want to do to improve our well-being, we can put in this framework of what does it look like when things are going really well? How do I keep that going? What does it look like when things are going downhill? What actions can I take to stop that in its tracks? One of the things that I think is a big utility of the RAP is that it can help you slow down that going downhill process, right? I think for a lot of people, it can feel like whether it's your mental health or some other kind of health condition, we can go from 0 to 60. So going from being okay to being in crisis. And what RAP does is it breaks down those steps in between. So what does it look like at 20, right? When I'm having some warning signs. What does it look like at 40 when things are breaking down, but I'm not in a crisis yet? And what can I do about it? So anything that pertains to our health, our behavior, all of those kinds of things, we can put under that lens. Does that make sense?
Yes, definitely. And how long is your program? And are you able to teach it online now? I thought there was an issue with that before.
Yeah. So in terms of the length of the program, it varies. We have offered it as a 2-day workshop before. So sometimes folks like that kind of intensive way of doing it. It has been offered over, it kind of varies on the facilitator and the group that we're working with. Sometimes we do 8 to 10 weeks of 2-hour sessions or hour-and-a-half sessions. So it is kind of an extensive program and curriculum. If we're working with an individual one-on-one, they get to really, direct how much time, where they want to focus. And yes, we, much to our dismay, we're told by the Copeland Center, who are the oversight body for RAP, that with the fidelity of the program, we are not supposed to facilitate it on Zoom. We are having our gears turning about maybe some creative ideas about how we could teach about RAP without saying, this is the fidelity RAP model, so that we may have a little more wiggle room to get those skills to people. But we have our services for RAP have been in person this year.
Great. I saw on your website the program MHA Connect.
Yes.
Is that still in effect, and how is that going? And would you describe that a bit for us?
Yeah, so that program is in its infancy, I would say. So this is a relatively new idea. There was something similar the Mental Health Association did many years ago that was called the Aurora Street Friends. But essentially, it's a matching program for adults who have mental health concerns, who are looking for maybe some more community inclusion, activity, getting out, building some social skills, getting out of the house, adding some structure to their day. And we are currently in the process of training volunteers to be sort of, we're still figuring out how exactly we want to describe them. Right now, we're working with the term mentor, but folks who may, accompany people in getting out into the community and having that additional support. So that program is in the works. They're in their training phase right now.
That's great. And how would someone become a mentor?
Yeah, so they would reach out to Charles Niven, who
Mhm.
is our one of our peer training specialists, and he's also a family peer advocate. We all kind of juggle hats here, but he is the lead on that project. And just to throw out his email address, it's C Niven, just N as in Nancy, I V as in Victor, E and then S in Nancy at mhaedu.org.
Great, thank you. And there's a question in the chat. I've seen many teens struggling with a mixture of drug abuse, self-medication, and dealing with mental health. Are there groups for teens in Ithaca that deal with both struggles and how they interplay with each other?
Hmm, that is a good question. I don't I don't know of any offhand that deal with those two issues together. Um, it's possible that there may be programs with alcohol and drug counsel or cars that I'm not aware of. That may be the case, but unfortunately, I don't know of anything offhand. Um, Certainly, at the Mental Health Association, it's very much my philosophy that we do not judge youth for what they do in order to cope. And my response is always, okay, what else you got? Right? What else you got? Because as a strange adult, I know me telling someone not to do something probably isn't going to get very far. But I also try to help teens recognize that, like, okay, so you're using this thing that you say is working for you. Do you have access to it all the time? Can you use it all the time? Probably not. So what else you got? So yeah, so we definitely work with teens and can be supportive of that kind of dual diagnosis situation. But I'm not sure of other programs.
Okay. You mentioned that you had involvement with the summer camp that MHA had, and um, a family member of mine attended the summer camp, and it was like the first time that this young person, I think, experienced a place where people weren't going to give up on him,
Mm.
and it was very heartwarming and just an excellent experience. And I wonder, do you have anything in the works like that, or any thought that you might? I think because it's not active right now, right?
It's not. Yeah, and that was a super hard decision for us to make. And what had happened was, I think, like a lot of wonderful programs, the state funding got chipped away and disappeared over time. We had relied on grants, and the grants got smaller and smaller. Um, and our agency infrastructure, without that additional funding, um, the program kind of became beyond what we had capacity for. So that was a really hard call, right? Because the program was really valuable, and we want to be able to do it safely and do it well. So at this time, there are not plans in the works to bring it back right now. We are very open to collaborating with other summer camps to provide training and support, because I think inclusion is the best philosophy. So if we can support other camps and having the capacity to not give up on these kids, that's really what I would like to see happen.
Sure. I think that one of the many benefits of this program was that was it was open and welcoming to children of people living with mental health conditions.
Yes.
So there was just a recognition that children's lives can be very challenging sometimes, and having a way, like a respite and a way to have fun in a different way. It was I think that was unique in that
Mm-hmm.
this program was unique in that. Um, okay. Um, think about collaborating in some way in the community to try to move forward with that, because I think you're right. Working with other programs that already have the infrastructure in place to to have, more inclusive for many different ways children are living and experiencing would be great. Okay, let's see. Oh, could you talk a little about the difference between, we've heard you use two different terms, peer specialist and peer advocate. Could you, is there a difference, and how do you become one or the other?
Yes. Yeah, there's a lot of semantics around peer work. Some places say peer advocate, some people say peer specialist, some people say peer professional. Um, in the context that I'm using it, is really just the titles from New York State. So all peer professionals, whatever you want to say, provide advocacy, right? That is integral to what we do. We want to support people in developing their own self advocacy skills and speaking up for themselves. Many peers in the workforce are advocating on community levels, even legislative levels. So we're advocates regardless, right? A certified peer specialist is the title for an adult with lived experience of their own mental illness or their own mental health concerns, using that experience of recovery to support other people who are going through that. The family peer advocate, that lived experience is about raising children who have faced those challenges and supporting other parents and caregivers who are raising children with mental health concerns. So that's the difference in the language as far as how our titles work. But there's a lot of overlap, and our family peer advocates are also peer specialists. And I think that can be really helpful because, like you mentioned, there's a lot of parents out there that are struggling with mental health issues. And very often these things run in families, right? So we often find that when we're supporting a family that has a child facing these issues, sometimes the parents really need that support too. And I think that's a real benefit of our family peer advocate staff also being peer specialists.
And what is the training? How does someone hook up with that training or find that training? Is there a
Yeah.
cost for it? How long does it take?
Yeah. So for the certified peer specialist training, so that's, working with your own lived experience of mental health issues. What is fabulous is that it is totally free. If you go to if you just search on Google Academy of Peer Services, you'll find a website, and these are all online self-paced courses that cover a wide range of things, from the history of the mental health care movement, things like the Americans with Disabilities Act, different listening skills, advocacy skills, all kinds of different things and concepts that you would need to know in this work. And there's also a number of elective courses that you're asked to take. So you get to have some self-direction in what you want to focus on. So you complete those, and you can take however long as you need to do it. So that's another benefit as well. And they have a lot of accessibility features on that website, which is nice. So once you've completed those courses, there is an application process. If you have been doing supervised peer work, so let's say you've been leading support groups or what have you for a certain number of hours, you can apply for full certification. If you do not have those hours, you can apply for provisional certification. That all goes through New York State. You have to send like your high school diploma or transcript to prove, that you've graduated high school. That is one requirement. And letters of recommendation. And then that gets processed, and then you get your certification. So if you're provisional, you then would want to get those supervised hours in to maintain your certification. And that could even take place if folks are just starting to get their feet wet. That could even take place through volunteer work here with supervision from one of our folks. Or you can get your full certification, and there are some continuing education requirements with that. The family peer advocate process, admittedly, I'm a little less familiar with because I haven't been through that myself. But I know it is, there is a bit more involved with that. I know there's a training that they go through that is called the Parent Empowerment Program, which is very much focused on, well, it's in the name, right? Empowering parents. And there are a number of different courses, some online, and I think there may be some in-person trainings that they have to do as well. That is a certification that's been established longer. And I think because they can have more multi-systems involvement, it's a little more extensive. I do believe that there are some costs associated with that training. I don't have all the details, but the best place to go for information on that is an organization called Families Together in New York State. And if you look them up, they will have all of that information.
Great, thank you. And where would we find peer advocates working in the community? Where would they be helping?
Yeah. So it's interesting because I know of a number of peer advocates that are working in the community by another name, right? So I know folks who maybe have peer specialist training, but in the positions that they're in, they're not necessarily named as that. And I don't necessarily want to out them, but I think it's good to know that. I know that there have been peer specialists over at Unity House. I know that there are also substance use recovery peer specialists out there, and some of them I believe are associated with the drug treatment court. In terms of people who are titled as peer specialists and working as peer specialists, I don't know of many other places besides Mental Health Association. And I know I mentioned Unity House. I think Lakeview may have at one time. I'm not sure if they still do. Yeah, but we're kind of the hub around here. We'd love to see it expand.
And do you think that there will be opportunity for that with all of the changes that are happening with crisis response? And we have so much need here.
Yeah, we're hopeful. Certainly funding is always an issue. It seems like no matter what happens, mental health is kind of at the bottom of the priority list for budgets. I'm hopeful that there's some movement there as it becomes clearer and clearer that we really are in a crisis, and that crisis is taxing other systems too. So I'm hopeful. I know there is more funding coming down the line too, with some of the COVID related relief funding that has come in. The benefit of peer services is that it is significantly less expensive than a lot of our more medical model clinicians and psychiatrists and all of that kind of thing. So I think it may in some ways be easier to expand the peer workforce with those investments. There has been more interest. I've certainly heard more in the community about interest in getting peers involved. So it's really just a matter of the funding. I think that the desire is there, and I think that there are people who want to do the work.
Yes, and I always have concern when we talk about adding more opportunities for peer advocates to work in the community, that we value that workforce, because we have a hard time valuing the mental health workforce that serves our loved ones, or any of us for our mental health needs. So when we add another level of that workforce to kind of serve as a relief valve, we need to make sure they have all the supports that they need, and for their own mental health, and also they're valued monetarily.
Exactly. And yeah, I think there is a hierarchy, right? If I don't have a graduate degree and my expertise comes from my lived experience, how am I valued compared to someone who has that graduate degree, right? And certainly, I mean, I'm working on my graduate degree right now. It's definitely very valuable, but it's something to consider. And another big issue with the peer workforce's supervision, because it's different than supervising clinicians. Having a clinician supervise a peer worker can create a power dynamic that is maybe not ideal. And a big part of being a part of the peer workforce is maintaining our own mental health recovery in this work. And that has to be an aspect of the supervision. And there needs to be some, accommodation for that, because the expertise is in the lived experience, which, by the way, doesn't go away. So yeah, there's a lot of factors. And I think there is some risk in kind of trying to rush to fill the gap by suddenly hiring a bunch of peers without thinking it through very carefully. I think there is urgency to make it happen, but I hope that agencies and organizations are very careful and intentional about how they do that.
For sure. And well, a degree may not be attached to the experience. The experience is what you're an expert in. And all of a sudden, we're valuing that experience in order to fill this gap. So, so there's value there.
Yep, exactly.
So, you are an expert in your experience. So, there was a question that I had here, just kind of fell out of my mind. Okay. Well, I think that I have exhausted all of my questions, and I don't see any more questions in the chat. Is there anything that you think we have not covered tonight that you would like to?
I guess just if I were to give a closing message, I always like to tell people that one of the most important things you can do for someone who's struggling with their mental health is just listen. I don't think I can repeat that enough. I think so often when we're trying to be supportive, it can cause us distress to see someone we care about in distress, right? We want to fix it. We want to help them feel better. Maybe we want to move on to the next thing sometimes. Maybe we're pulled in different directions, or we feel like we're going to say the wrong thing. And I can't tell you how much time I spend on my job not saying a thing, right? Really just holding space and listening, telling people that it makes sense that they feel the way they do, that it's okay to feel the way they do. And sometimes it's really helpful to even just say, wow, that sounds like it really sucks. Right? Maybe we're told we're being dramatic. So just remember that you can always go back to listening as your touchstone when you feel like you don't know what to do, when you feel like you don't know how to help somebody. Just listen. You can do it.
Yes, I agree with you. Once in a while, a support group facilitator at NAMI will say they just couldn't figure out the right thing to say, to help someone. And I'll just say, sometimes there just aren't words. And sometimes the silence is a good place for everybody to kind of sit. So, and I did want to mention, I neglected to mention that we have benefited from peer advocates at NAMI Finger Lakes with our family to family class. We do have our 7th out of 8 classes. We do have an opportunity to hear from someone with lived experience and with recovery. And we have had people from the Mental Health Association come and share. And that's actually one of the most moving and important sessions that we have. People give a lot of feedback on that. So we really value the opportunity to hear from the peer advocates through your organization. And I also wanted to touch base on your little tagline on your email. I really appreciate it. And it's really it's the Angela Davis quote: "You have to act as if it were possible to radically transform the world, and you have to do it all the time." And that's really just so meaningful because that's really the mindset change. It require
Yeah.
to change this. And our mantra at NAMI in New York State is there is no recovery from COVID without recovery from mental health or mental illness, so in funding for mental health. So so we definitely are on the same page with that. And I really appreciate your time and all of this information. I can't wait to share it. We're always interested in what's happening over there. And I probably refer someone at least once a week to Mental Health Association who reaches out to NAMI for their loved one. So I thank you and appreciate you being with us. And I hope everyone has found this informative and that we have a happy and safe holiday week. And wish you good night.
Thank you so much, Beth, for having me. Always a pleasure.
Thank you.
Take care, everyone.
We appreciate being with us.